Lisa Jefferson had faced plenty of tough calls in her decade on the force, but nothing prepared her for the moment she found herself staring into the cold eyes of two fellow officers, hands twitching near their holsters, treating her like a suspect on the run. It was a crisp, quiet Tuesday morning when Lisa Jefferson, the freshly appointed chief of police for Rivertown, cruised down Interstate 47 in her black sedan. She cherished these early drives, the kind of solitude that let her focus on the challenges of leading the Rivertown PD. The autumn breeze poured in through her open window, rustling her thoughts like fallen leaves. Lisa was no rookie. A decade in the force had sharpened her instincts and earned her the top job, but she never flaunted her rank. Quiet confidence, that was her style. Approaching exit 13, her rearview mirror lit up with flashing red and blue lights. A police cruiser trailed her, sirens slicing through the calm. Confused, Lisa checked her speed. Well within the limit. Registration? Up to date. No traffic violations. Still, the cruiser signaled her to pull over. Brows raised, Lisa steered onto the shoulder, coming to a stop. She watched through the side mirror as two officers stepped out, sunglasses on, uniforms crisp, strides sharp. Something felt off. A tall officer with a buzz cut approached, tapping her window with a flashlight. Lisa rolled it down, calm but alert. "Morning, officers. Problem?" The officer leaned in, expression hard. "License and registration," he snapped, ignoring her question. Without argument, Lisa reached for her wallet, questions churning in her mind. Why the stop? She handed over her credentials. The shorter officer, stocky with a scowl, hovered on the passenger's side, eyes narrowing as he scanned the interior. "What's your business here?" he demanded, voice dripping with suspicion. "Staying to work," Lisa replied, steady as ever. Officer James, as his name tag read, examined her license, skepticism etched on his face. His partner, Grady, paced around the car, eyes darting like a predator hunting weakness. "You work around here?" James pressed, tone sharper now. "Yes, I do." Lisa's voice stayed calm, resisting the urge to say more. She knew the game. Escalating would only feed the fire. James raised an eyebrow, doubtful. "We'll see about that," he muttered, turning to Grady. The two exchanged whispered words, glancing at her, their tension thickening the air. Minutes crawled. Lisa's fingers drummed on the wheel, her senses sharp. Something wasn't right. The undercurrent of hostility felt personal, not procedural. Finally, James returned to her window, face set like stone. "Step out of the vehicle." Lisa blinked. "Excuse me?" "Step out," he repeated, tone edged with threat. She kept her composure. "Can you at least tell me why?" Grady's voice cut through, harsher. "Now." Left with no choice, Lisa opened the door and stepped out. The officers closed in, hands hovering near their holsters. A show of force she recognized all too well. "You want to explain what this is about?" she asked, voice firm, posture unyielding. James smirked. "Reports of a vehicle matching this description involved in illegal activity." "Illegal activity?" Lisa's tone held disbelief. "What kind?" Grady crossed his arms, eyes hard. "We ask the questions." Lisa knew this routine. As a black woman, she'd faced her share of power plays, but this one stung differently. Did they even check her ID, or was this about something else? The officer searched her car, their smirks growing. They were enjoying this, convinced they had power over her. Nothing turned up. Grady sounded almost disappointed. "Clear." James's hand stayed on his holster. "You're coming with us for questioning." For the first time, Lisa smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. They didn't understand, but they would. "Are you sure you want to do this?" she asked, voice laced with something they couldn't quite place. Confusion flashed across their faces, but before they could respond, a black SUV pulled up. The door swung open, and out stepped Deputy Chief Martin, their boss. Lisa's smile deepened. The game was over. The moment Deputy Chief Martin stepped out of that black SUV, everything changed. The officers who had been so confident, so smug, now stood frozen, their faces draining of color as they realized the truth. They hadn't just pulled over a random driver. They had pulled over their new boss. "Lisa!" Martin called out, his voice slicing through the thick tension. "Everything all right here?" The air seemed to freeze. Officers James and Grady stood like statues, their faces pale as realization dawned. Lisa Jefferson wasn't some random motorist. They had been harassing their newly appointed chief of police. James's hand fell from his holster, his confidence evaporating like mist in the morning sun. He stepped back, eyes wide, like he'd seen a ghost. Grady, usually brimming with false bravado, couldn't hide his shock. His arms hung awkwardly at his sides, his posture rigid. Reality was sinking in, and it wasn't pretty. Martin's serious gaze shifted between Lisa and the officers. "What's going on here?" His tone was like a gavel drop, demanding answers, leaving no room for excuses. James swallowed hard, fumbling for words. We pulled her over because the car matched a description. Involved in suspicious activity," he stammered. Martin raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Suspicious activity?" His eyes flicked to Lisa, who stood silently, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with an unreadable expression. Martin knew Lisa well, knew exactly what this was. She wasn't just another motorist. She had been testing her team. And from the look on her face, the test had gone spectacularly wrong. Lisa hadn't said a word since Martin arrived. She didn't need to. The silence was heavy, pressing down on the officers. They had no clue who she was when they stopped her. But now, standing before their deputy chief, the truth was inescapable. "Let me get this straight," Martin continued, folding his arms across his chest. "You pulled over a car without a valid reason, ordered a civilian out without explanation, and now you're talking about making an arrest?" James opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. Grady stared at the ground as if hoping it would open up and swallow him whole. Lisa finally broke her silence. "Did you run my license, James?" James flinched, caught off guard. Well, we were going to." Lisa's eyes narrowed. "So, that's a no." Her voice was calm, but the undercurrent of steel was unmistakable. "You didn't even bother to check who I was, did you? You saw a black woman in a car you decided looked suspicious, and that was enough." Grady shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting away. "It's not like that, Chief." Lisa raised a hand, cutting him off. "Oh, it's exactly like that. You thought I wouldn't question it. You thought I'd just comply." Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Neither officer could meet her gaze. Martin's voice cut through the quiet. "Do you two understand how serious this is? You harass the chief of police under false pretenses. Do you have any idea what this does to the department's reputation? What message this sends?" Grady's hands trembled. "We didn't know. We weren't trying to." Martin's hand shot up. "You weren't trying to what? Follow protocol? Treat people with respect? Serve and protect?" James, desperate to salvage something, blurted out, "We thought—" Lisa's voice was sharp. "No. That's the problem. You didn't think. You didn't follow procedure. You didn't treat me like a citizen of this town. You treated me like a suspect the second you saw me." The weight of her words pressed down on them. They knew they had screwed up. There was no talking their way out of this. Martin turned to Lisa. "What do you want to do?" Lisa took a deep breath, her gaze softening just a fraction. The anger was still there, simmering beneath the surface. She wasn't going to let them off easy. But this wasn't just about her. It was bigger than that. "I'm not going to fire you," she said, her voice steady. Relief flickered across their faces, but it was short-lived. "But there will be consequences." She turned to Martin. "I want them suspended, effective immediately, pending an internal investigation. Martin nodded. Consider it done. Lisa stepped closer to the officers, her eyes locking onto theirs. If you're going to wear that badge, you better earn it. Every single day. The silence that followed was deafening. James and Grady stood there, the weight of their actions finally sinking in. They had made a mistake, a colossal one, and there was no escaping it. Martin's gaze was hard. This isn't about saving face or avoiding bad press. This is about justice, about fair treatment. We can't let this happen again. Not to anyone. Lisa's eyes didn't leave the officers. This stops here, right now. Martin nodded in agreement. You've got a lot to think about, he said to James and Grady, his voice firm. I hope you use this suspension wisely. Lisa turned to walk back to her car, the tension still thick in the air. She had made her point, loud and clear. As she got in and closed the door, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. The lesson had been delivered. This wasn't just a warning. It was a wake-up call. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. See you next time.